Hello and good afternoon, one and all. I always think about what I'm going to say, and I am coming to the conference and I hear the people, and it would change my previous intention. With your permission, I would like to relate 2 or 3 sentences to what Meir and Yara said, and then say a few things on the level of principle. We're talking about national resilience. I want to talk Hebrew for a minute, although we had to look for another word for resilience. I'm going to go back to Hebrew, my mother tongue. We're talking about the education system as an overall system that has a larger vision. We talk about a very society that has a very complex and unsimple vision as a result of many communities. But you said it. You said that if Ministry of Education would agree with what we say, then we're going to cooperate. And this is where the problem starts. This is the beginning of the tragedy in the state of Israel, because everyone wants to cooperate if they do what they think is right. In other words, let's talk about what Professor Yara Baron said. A person has to be soft and not hard as a tree. I know many people who talk about needing to be soft and lenient, but they are very rigid about it. And their discourse about how you have to flow is said so very rigidly, when the intention is the softness, the leniency, as I understand, is the one that I want to suggest to Israeli society. But if you don't follow my interpretation, then this is not going with the flow. You cannot have a discourse with ifs. You cannot have a discourse when you come out of an attitude where there is truth and lie, or truth and half the truth. We have to be more comfortable in this discourse. And I think when we talk about trust, you cannot cast the entire question of trust on the shoulders of the education system, because the main problem of trust is of the entire Israeli society at large. The way the Ministry of Finance conducts itself, and the Ministry of Security. Let's start with a trust of the academy. You're heading a college. Let's start there. A different relationship between the students and the entire system of higher education. There is something very profound about the lack of trust in Israeli society. I'm convinced that the education system has to be the main place where change begins. But let's try and understand, where did this culture come from, where every person is trying to be conniving? Let's try and understand what happened in the state of Israel, where you're always suspecting that people have non-kosher motives. A very interesting example. I was addressed by several mayors in Israel. They wanted to have autonomy and released the city from the headquarters of the Ministry of Education, and the main claim was trust. You're dismissed, said the minister. And I said that I'm willing to release, but I have a condition. And they always said, what, don't you believe us? Don't you trust us? Why do I need this entire supervision? I do have a condition. If tomorrow morning you're going to someone is going to park their car in your city where it's forbidden, and then the inspector is going to ask him, what are you doing here? And he would say, just for a second, my sick granny is in the HMO, and this policeman would say, I also had a sick granny. Don't tell me that you talk about trust in your city. If you want to talk about trust in your city, when someone is late one day in paying their property taxes, and he would say, I was after grieving, or I was in the army service, and you would say, well, I know all these stories and excuses, then don't talk to me about trust in your city. You want to talk about trust in your city? Don't start with schools. Let's have a whole fully comprehensive municipal program through which you can really talk about trust as culture. Trust cannot be only about schools, only about the Ministry of Education. I am accepting this challenge of leading a discourse of trust. I identify with what Yara said, because they are part of the program that we already submitted, that we already signed. It's all in there. Perhaps differently phrased, but the same idea. There's nothing new here. These are things I believe in, and this is why I'm where I am right now. This is for a discourse of trust, cooperation, defining the purpose of education. And so I want to say, if we want to talk about trust, it has to be a national goal. If we want to see if we want to know what's going to define national resilience, is when one very distinguished institute will devote its time to talk about trust, the trust issue. It has to do with security, economy, welfare, and education. You cannot talk about trust only within schools or the relationship between the education ministry and teachers. This is an Israeli illness. Every time after we have even 1 week abroad and we see what a society that has trust looks like, and by the way, what is the price someone who would harm the trust would have to pay, it's a very heavy toll, then we envy this. And I think it is about time to put trust as one of our strategic goals, having this discourse about trust in Israel. Given that this is agreed upon all of us, I would like to touch upon 2 or 3 things I have within the Israeli education system, perhaps 2 things. The first one is the fact that I live in a society that is led by fear. There are people who think that each and every saying, whatever it is, shakes society, creates chaos. Immediately the word threat has become part of our discourse. The Iranian threat, threatening freedom of expression, threatening one's identity. We always talk about threat. We saw this map about the resilience of students in Israel. How will they have emotional resilience when they live in a world that keeps on talking about threats? We have to maintain our very narrow community. I have to be with religious people just like mine. And if they're not one like the other, we have to separate the schools, because God forbid if 2 different people will meet in the same school. Not to mention, in my opinion, one of the main mistakes, I think that it was perhaps necessary historically, but this issue of various streams of separating secular and religious students, I think this is one of the most problematic historical mistakes, and this is one of the main failures of Israeli society, the fact that if they do meet, they would meet in the army service or in academic frameworks, and this is a very crooked message. We can die together, but to live together, well, that's too much. And so in the army, I'll always hear about the story how they laid one next to the other, this one wearing a kippah and the other one from northern Tel Aviv. And I don't think that they only have to be there in the army service. I think it is a flawed ethos of society. It's time to change it. We live in a world of fears. When we said, let's have a multi-annual topic, the other person is me, we try to create something that says, let's stop being afraid. We don't have to be afraid, seculars of religious, poor and rich, immigrants and Israelis, Jews and Arabs. We have to be more comfortable, more lenient. Stop with this language of threats, and also ministers should stop lecturing about fear, whether it's here or in other conferences. Ministers should also stop intimidating people. I think it's about time, and we're mature enough to hear things in a comfortable manner, to weigh them down. We don't have to see Facebook with his bloody hands pictures. We don't have to have all of these contacts that immediately make our juices boil. It is flawed. It takes Israeli society to places it should not be. So if we remove this fear, if education system will be more comfortable and enabling, a place where you can discuss things thoroughly, even a place that you can tell someone that he was wrong. Not each and every saying does harm one's freedom of education. You cannot fire people based on ideological concepts. I'm not going to conduct myself as ministers before me. When someone said something that did not align with their ethos, they immediately removed them from the system. This was not in my time. I think that you must not lay off teachers on the idea of ideological beliefs, but you can definitely tell a person that they were wrong in their doing, and it's fine. Someone said something, you have a dialogue. Why did you say that? What is possible? What is not possible? We are a multicultural society. We have all of these ethos that we want to preserve as part of our national ethos. Not everything is such history, and it's such war, and it's such harm. And by the way, students, when they hear this, and unfortunately they see it on TV, things that are far worse. I don't think that if a student hears a counselor or a psychologist, I don't think that if someone says something that is said about the value of serving in the IDF, would immediately decide not to serve in the army. Some things should be said, some should not be said. There are expressions that you must not say, but we can have a more of a moderate dialogue without saying, if you keep quiet, if you don't say that, if you do say that, what happened? What is happening to us? Why are we so hysterical? When there is fear, we don't talk about identity, because fear is the identity. When we don't talk about identity, our soul is empty. And when our soul is empty, violence occurs. When there's violence, we see more and more horrible phenomenon of stabbing. I'm not going to play this game whether it happened within school or outside the school. I'm the Minister of Education and I'm responsible for the students 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It does not matter if it's in school, outside the school, in the yard, afternoon, during school break. This is my personal responsibility, absolutely so. But this happens because schools have become places that are poor in spirit. This is because the students feel that nobody lit a light inside of them, nobody ignited the hearts. I want to say that this happens because in many respects our schools have become irrelevant. And it is not because of the teachers, it's because of the Ministry of Education, because teachers are excellent. We have to allow them. We have to give them more rope. When you take a teacher and you put them in high school, in a sophomore year until the end of the senior year, and they're busy preparing for a test, and you threaten that if he's not going to meet this or that percentage, then he has failed. When you take a teacher and you have measurement as the god of this system, when you take an educational system and you put it into some sort of a mania depression type of happening, people are always busy in how to improve their grade in a point or half a point, because you know that when this is a very known secret to everyone, every time we show you that we raise those people who have their matriculation exams, you have to see if the dropout percentage did not go up as well, because it usually goes together. When we raise the percentage of people that have finished your matriculation exam, we have raised in the dropout. These are amazing children, and I believe that some of them are going to have achievements in life, that their friends, those who finished their exams, will be envious of. But this was not an appropriate year. They had their personal crisis happening, and perhaps this was a time to hold them, enable things, give another hour in personal conversation, and maybe visit at home and see how they're doing during the summer break. So I think that we need to turn school into a place which is more relevant. And what is a relevant place? Well, once it deals with questions of identity. If once the purpose was knowledge for the learner, today it's going to be the learner's identity. Knowledge is used in order to build one's identity. Second time, I think that schools have to be relevant by, as was said before, they prepare the students to the 21st century, given that knowledge is not the source of power of teacher, but rather inspiration, the ability to raise questions, learning out of a dilemma, the fact that we are going to fit our measurement indices to modern world, not just citing this or another answer, but a whole plethora of measurement indices, whether it's writing works. We're talking about students who finished the high school system and cannot say a full sentence with a beginning and end and a coherent middle. We talk about children who are 16 or 17 years old. The word yes is a too long a word for them, and they just say, yeah. We talk about people who cannot write a full page, one page, but they have an excellent diploma, because their diploma is examining the 19th or 20th century goals, the new high school diploma needs to show a person that has a sense of criticism, that can show a way. It needs a person that has a dream and responsibility. It requires a person that is ready to get up of his chair, go to the community center and want to change the state of Israel. Because if you go back to Ben Gurion and this role model society that I keep on talking about, we cannot let go after we have built a state on this land where Isaiah and Yehezkel treaded. We cannot let go of this portion of land where all the verses, the lofty verses were said about justice, equality, freedom, depth of thought, and relationship between person to person. And we cannot have the society that we have. We cannot allow ourselves, not ourselves, our children, or our grandchildren, not to dream once again about the role model society. We have children who wish it. We have teachers who are suitable for that. We have good programs. We need trust, enabling, and shattering of the fear. Everything that is important to me is to see how we are enabling again in Israeli society. What's important is to see how do we stop talking about this with this threatening lingo. How do we create a place where each and every person can find his place, a world which every opinion is important. How do we act moderately to each and every point of view, even if we don't like it? How do we empower a person? If we talk about responsibility in the manner of volunteering, for example, this is why one of the milestones of the program that I just laid today. I don't like the word reform. I think it's problematic. We talk about the program that we're presenting to Israeli society, and by the way, one of the reasons for which this might be successful is because I think that this is the first time where a Minister of Education is putting forth a program that is not going to enjoy its fruits. It's not going to be less than 10 years. It is a long-term program, including training of teachers, adapting study programs, creating structural changes. It is a slow sort of program, and we want to look worldwide to see where strategic changes occurred. It was in places where they didn't have programs that are going to be 1 or 2 year things, but rather where the programs were for a decade, for 15 years. Look at Finland and Canada, places where things have really happened. It is always a process. It is not a soup powder. It is something much more deep. It takes time. It has to simmer slowly. You have to create this new thing, and you never know what the flavor is going to be at the end. You put in everything in order to hope that things are going to be right. I believe in the teachers and the students and the principals. I think it's time to stop talking in this language of fear. We have to shatter those borders between various communities. We have to be more lenient, more comfortable listening to the other person. We have to know that the time education is more complex, it's going to be more profound. It's time to know that when there is a dialogue, we're going to have our spine. It is time to know that when we are willing to contest something, we're going to have deeper roots. Our thought, the thought that structural or educational point of view with an exclamation mark is going to ensure the future for Israel does not have any research basis, does not have any moral justification. And so this complexity and dialogue is the main part of educational concept in Israel, is the essence of education in Israel. I hope we're successful. This is not a simple task. When we talk about being soft and lenient, we have to be modest, to meet, to listen to other people, not only talk about the fact that we should not talk with exclamation marks, but you yourself have to be open enough to hear other people. I hope that we are on the verge of a period of time where we will be able to have a more profound educational system, enabling system, because it is definitely the resilience of the state of Israel. Thank you.